Samuel. And if we want to talk about anyone who actually needed a revival, we need to look at David. So when we look at 2 Samuel, the 12th chapter, I want to look at the 7th verse of that 12th chapter of 2 Samuel. When we get there, say, I'm there. In that 7th verse, you're going to find these words. Thou art the man. That's enough. Thou art the man. Amen. You can use that generically or however you want to put it. Either you are the man or the woman. It is you. As we look at David, first of all, we look at the importance of David. The Bible declares him as a man after God's own heart. And then we look at what David did, and then our mind begin to wonder, how can David do what David done and still be considered a man after God's own heart? In the 11th chapter of 2 Samuel, we find David, and we find what David did do. First thing David did, he disregarded his position as king, because kings generally went out after the victory with their troops. David decided that he would stay in. And I want to inform us that many times staying away from our duties cause us to act unrighteously. Can I say that again? Staying away from your duties sometimes causes you to act unrighteously. Secondly, David, he went out on the balcony and he allowed his eyes to see something. And my uncle, Pastor Stiles, always said, what my eyes see sometimes affects my heart. And so when David saw Bathsheba, he observed her, and sometimes staring too long at a situation causes our mind to wander where it don't need to be. And so what happened, David looked, and then something else occurred, is that not only did he look, not only did he stare, but then he inquired. He wanted to know who this woman was. Don't you know appealing things brings an interest? And we want to know what these appealing things are, and so we actually inquire that someone can give us what this thing or this desire that we have is. Then something else occurred. When David found out that what he was looking at belonged to somebody else, it did not stop him from taking what was not his. A lot of times in our spiritual walk, we have a tendency of taking things that don't belong to us. Sin can make us desire things, want things, and take things that don't belong to us. After all of this, sin will also make us put the blame or try to pass the blame to someone else. David told Uriah to go to his wife to cover up the sin that he did. But faithfulness of another man will mess up your plan. If someone is faithful to God, it would destroy all of your sinful plans. So many times David constantly sent him, got him drunk to send him. But his faithfulness to David allowed him to stay there. And David not only pushed the envelope that far, but he pushed it a little farther by allowing Uriah to go head on and take his own death certificate to be killed. Give this to Joab and allow Joab to put you on the front line. Faithfulness still allows a man to stay faithful to his leader, yet it might cost him his own life. And then something else sin does. Sin causes us to cover up our faults for so long that we much forget that we did the sin ourselves. I don't know. I'm only speaking by myself. So basically what happened, many times we cover up our sin for so long and we have lived in it for so long, we forget about the sin that we did. But what happened here is that even though we might forget, God still remembers. God called Nathan the prophet and informed him to go and tell this great parable, the Old Testament parable, to him, and talked about this man having one little ewe-lamb and began to express the fact how he colored him, fed him, slept with him, loved him. And this other guy had all these lambs, and he decided when he had a guest to take this from this man and take care of his guests, realizing that he had more than the guest had. And I want to inform you that many times we want more. We're not satisfied with what we have. Even much at the respect of grabbing something that belonged to somebody else, we reach and grab it and we want it for ourselves. But that's not the whole scenario of the passage. The passage let us know that when Nathan told him this, how can we get angry at a sin that we done, get mad at another man because he committed the same sin? David was so angry that his anger said that this man needed to die. And can you imagine a heartfelt situation when Nathan said, "It's you"? In time of revival, we often look at somebody else. And many times, I told somebody, I said, now, you know, Christians are the most hypocritical people that there are. It's because they actually forget where they came from. Once they get in a position where they are, they actually forget that they too is a sinner. They forget that they too sin. And they forget that they too need forgiveness. Revival allows us to look within ourselves and see the sins that we have committed. Don't make a plea to man. 1 John 1:9 says that if you confess your sin, that means to acknowledge or to agree with the sins that you have committed. It's that Greek word, homolego, talking about to agree with. God already knows you sin, but he needs you to agree with the sin that you have done. And he said that if you agree with it, he said he's faithful and he's just to forgive us of our sin and cleanse us. David wrote Psalm 51 because he realized that he had done something. He looked at himself, and now the spiritual salvation he had with God seemed to wither. Because he said, God, restore into me. In other words, he felt that something was gone out of him. And he needed God to put something back in him that he had lost. And that's what revival is. It's to put something back in you that you have lost. And when you put something back in you that you have lost, God will restore unto you the joy of your salvation. And when we reach that plateau of our reviving stage, whenever we leave here, we understand that all of us have made some mistakes. All of us have fallen short, and all of us have sinned. We still have that simple statement we need to God, forgive me of the sin that I have committed. And when we commit to the sins that we have committed to, God is faithful. He's just. He will forgive. He will cleanse. And he will move us in the direction in which we need to move. We're in a stage of revival. And once we are revived, we can tell somebody how God has cleansed us from the mistakes that we have made to be able to ensure somebody else that cleansing is possible.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Pastor Miles. We're going to sing a song, then we're going to move up a little high. Amen. I'm going to need y'all